Hey, my name is Elizabeth Carlindsey. I am a speech language pathologist. I've been working for Alpine School District for about 5 years. And then I've worked in a variety of settings for about the last 20 years. And this is Courtney Schneider.
Yep, I'm Courtney Schneider. I am a student, SLP clinician at Idaho State University, and I've had the privilege to work with the school district on an alternate license as an SLP, which has been a great experience for the last 3 years. And yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Okay. We are so excited that you would set aside some time tonight to explore this topic with us. It's one that we are excited about and really value. It's really an important piece to life and to our children and students' growth and ability to access positive experiences in school and in life. So we're grateful that you're participating in this with us, and hope that it will be, we want to, our goal is to leave you with lots of tools and ideas, things to practice, ways to support and model a lot of these principles in your homes and with the people around you. So that said, a little disclaimer, there are a couple things that we want to keep in mind. One is that everyone, including us, are working on better communication and better conversation skills, right? It's not something that we say, I have finally arrived and I'm great. We're all at different places in this development, and we have different strengths and different things that we struggle with. And as Courtney and I have talked about family dynamics and things like that, she has some different family dynamics that pose challenges, and mine are very different, but having a conversation in different contexts can be really challenging, and we have to learn to adapt. So just keep in mind, we realize that we're all learning and that there are always things to work on. And there are some kids who really struggle with this, some adults who really struggle with this. And there's a lot of in between. There are kids that are comfortable in some contexts, and then there are other things that they struggle with. So there's a range, and we're going to try to give you lots of practical tools to think about in supporting wherever you or someone is at, someone that you care about is at, in developing conversational skills. Another thing to keep in mind, we're going to talk about all of these ideas, and our one concern is we don't want you to feel overwhelmed or like you have to do all of it to do a good job. So as we go through tonight, we want you to just kind of think about one thing, choose one thing that you'd like to implement in the next week, so that it's not like, oh, I have to do all these things and how are we ever going to get to all of this? Just choose one thing that you think would be really good to start with. Something that you feel like, yeah, this will address some of the things that we would like to improve on and practice. So that's our invitation, and we want to just encourage you that this is worth trying and working at, and we can do it. We can improve, we can practice, we can keep growing throughout our lives in becoming better at conversations and building relationships. Yay, we're so happy. So happy. Okay, so we just did that one.
Yes, right, perfect. Okay, the first thing that we really want to start with is to know your why. Why are you here? And we have kind of a little description. We want you to get a piece of paper and write down who you'd like to help with conversation and what they do well in conversation, maybe what seems to be lacking. When do they seem most successful, least successful with interpersonal interaction? Where are their communication breakdowns, and how is it impacting their life at home, school, and community? We all have that one person that we're always thinking about, oh, how can we help? Or maybe it's ourselves. We're trying to figure out how to support communication. So I want you guys to take just a few minutes, think of that person, write down a few facts of things that they might struggle with or things that you might want to see improvements with them. So go ahead.
You can just flip over one of the papers in your packet if you want, or if you have a notebook that you brought, that's great.
Yes. And it can be any paper, just the back of any paper, whatever is most easiest for you guys. All right, I see a few people are still jotting some thoughts down. While you guys are still writing some thoughts down, I want, just by a raise of hand, how many people are here for kids with a focus of preschool age? Anyone here for preschool age kids? Okay, no one. Is anyone here for elementary school children? Okay, handful. How about middle school? Okay, awesome. Any high school? Okay, awesome. Okay, and our hope here is to, whatever age group your child is, we can help support them in their communication and their conversational skills. One quote that Elizabeth provided on here, and I loved it as soon as I read it. If all my possessions were taken from me with one exception, I would choose to keep the power of communication, for by it I would soon regain all the rest. I love this because it just pinpoints how important conversation is and communication is, especially in the role of building relationships. And I feel like that's the key with conversation, is we're trying to build relationships and trying to fit in society. So.
Perfect. And you have your own examples. You just wrote down your why. Recently, I had a father talking to me about some of the concerns that he had with his 6-year-old son. And he said, I'm realizing that this affects school and his social and his friends and his home. And it was this aha that, wow, this is affecting and impacting every aspect of his life. So with that, here we go. We're going to move forward into some of the foundational principles that guide conversation. So, thank you. So often we focus on, how do I teach these responses? How do I teach them what to say, what to do? And this model was created by a woman named Michelle Garcia Winner. She started this website called socialthinking.com. It's on the resources page in your notebook. And I've been following her for about 25 years, and she works with a variety of people and ages, adults included, who have social learning challenges. And she talks about how this is kind of like an iceberg, okay? And this is the water. So we see this, how people are responding, and often not realizing everything that builds into and contributes to those responses. So, and I have a little one here, but that I'll be referring to, but we want to focus not just on teaching, okay, you need to eye contact, let me see your eyes, let's use eye contact, but let's talk about this foundation. And we're going to start here with social attention. And then the next step up is, after we can pay attention to the social, to the world around us, how are we interpreting that? And then are we problem solving in order to respond appropriately in situations? So I really like this model because it shows that there's a much more to it than just teaching a skill of having eye contact. There are foundational things that we want to look at and pay attention to first. So we're going to, you can go to this website, and I'm just going to throw this out here. I don't have any connection with it, but I just have found it to be such a great resource. They have many free online training and webinars for just different aspects of things that you can, that we'll be talking about some of them tonight, but it's a great resource. So I highly recommend it.
Okay, so the beginning of that social attention component is the concept of who. And that really is the awareness of who is in the group that you're communicating with. You need to understand, am I talking to family? Am I talking to friends? Is it a teacher or a parent? Those are all different ways that we address communication and how we might portray our message. The next thing we have is, are you and your body in the group? And increasing that awareness of, am I listening right now? Am I hearing what is being said to me? Do they think that I'm listening to what they are saying to me? That awareness is key. We did have a little video here, but sadly the district network isn't allowing us to view it. So we also recommend going to this resource as well and seeing these quick little snippet webinar videos.
And that's from that same website, socialthinking.com. And this one is called Body in the Group, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and essentially the concept of body in the group, like I mentioned before, is making sure that their whole body listening. Their eyes are looking at the other person. Their body is in a circle and not out of the circle. And what those subtle social cues might be delivering to the other member of the conversation. Because if I'm looking at the clock constantly, I might be saying, I'm ready for this presentation to be over, right? But if I am making eye contact with you and showing you that I'm interested in being here and I have a message to deliver, then you guys are more receptive of me, right? So I think that's a very good first key awareness, is to make sure that our body is in the conversation. At the bottom, it is noted, each person in the group has thoughts and feelings. And this is very important. And then this keys into the concept of theory of mind. Basically, theory of mind is where you are understanding your own thoughts and that it differs from someone else's thoughts. And that is sometimes a really difficult skill for a lot of us to understand. And making sure that when we are talking to them, that, oh, they might not like basketball, but I really like basketball, and making sure they're on the same page and we're not just talking about basketball the whole time when no one's interested, right? You have anything else to add about that? Okay, I think. And then again, this was a little video talking about thoughts and feelings, and sadly we're not able to view it, but we highly recommend you watch this on your own time.
and again, that's just the concept that I have thoughts and feelings, you have thoughts and feelings, but they may be different. And that's a skill that's sometimes difficult for people who have social learning challenges. So, still you.
Okay, and this was the concept that we were talking to the few of you guys that got here a little early, to create a me file and also a friend file. So for those that got here a little bit later, we instructed everyone to get the manila folder, and on the inside of the manila folder, on the tan portion, to write things about yourself that's about you, that reflects who you are, your interests, your hobbies, anything like that you might want to deliver to another person. So I'll go ahead and read. So each family member can write a me file on a file folder, and that you can do this as a family activity and have everyone create a me folder. Each person can draw or cut and glue pictures from magazines of things they like and or dislike. They can compare each person's file and discuss how people often have common interest. but the different combination of these things are what make people unique. So I love that aspect where we write our own, we compare it to others, and we're like, oh yeah, my thoughts and ideas are a little different from yours, and that's okay. This is where we can have conversation and get your point of view, and you can get my point of view. And I think that's so beautiful. In my graduate program, I worked in a social communication group where we had a lot of adolescents that we provided treatment to. And one of the main things that we did was a friend file. One of the biggest things that I knew that this population wanted was friends, but they didn't know how to get it. So I loved having them complete this worksheet. And I believe we have that worksheet in your folder for you guys. And this just kind of gets them to reach out to their friends and be like, oh, what do they like to do? What is some information about their school? What subjects do they like? What types of foods do they like? What is some information about their family that is different or interesting? And then when they're in a situation, they can access that friend file and they can pull it out and know that, oh, okay, I want to have a conversation with this person, but I don't know how. Oh, they really like snakes. Let's talk about snakes. So I really like this. It's good for us to create the file and for our friends, and for us to create files for our friends.
Okay, and that's kind of a springboard for gathering more information. We can start here, and then what else can I find out? And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. I wanted to, so we're going to show this little video, but as we try to know when to start a conversation and where to start a conversation when it's the right time, that all begins with listening. And that goes back to this iceberg idea of the social attention. So we want to look at listening just a little bit. So when we think of listening, we think of hearing often. So this is a little clip. I want you to look for what the hearing helps with and what we miss with only hearing. So here we go. Now we're going to have sound. It's not playing with sound, do you have any?
Is it? No, try it now because I think you turned it on. There we go.
There we go.
Hi, can I talk to Whitney's husband? Hey, Tim, this is Hank. Yeah, Whitney's boss. Yeah, I was just calling to finalize tonight's plan for Whitney's surprise birthday party. Sure, I can hold. Hey, look, Mom, I can't talk right now. Yeah, I told you I don't work on a farm anymore. Got me a desk job. Well, why don't you just go onto the Google and type in how to slaughter a cow? All right, I'll walk you through it. Just hold your horses. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Whitney doesn't suspect a thing. Yeah, so just to double check, we're all gonna meet up at 6 o'clock and then catch her off guard when she gets home from work. Okay. Now, the first thing you wanna do is stay out of her way because she's a big old heifer. Yeah, she'll crush you like a Coke can. You know as well as I, she's been fattening up all winter. Oh, and make sure to sedate her before she realizes she's being attacked, or she'll struggle something awful. My, how that cow can bellow. Yeah, all of Whitney's friends know about it. They're excited to see it go down. It's gonna be the party of the year. Whole office is in on it, even the guys down at the parking garage. Yeah, look, it doesn't matter what you use to knock her out, okay? Yeah, just grab yourself some chloroform, tranquilizer darts. 2x4 upside the head. Hey, thanks, Tim. I couldn't have done this without you.
Maybe it's a different Tim.
I mean, every husband plans on doing something like this. But how many actually go through it? Okay, I gotta go. Yeah. Just make sure and kill her quick so she doesn't suffer. We don't want to hurt her, we just want to eat her. Hey, we'll see you soon, Tim. Okay, yeah, hope you're as hungry as I am. All right, boss, everything's ready for tonight. Got the blindfold and baseball bat.
Okay, so that's a great example of how listening only does not give us the whole picture, right? So what would have made the difference for her? If she could have seen what was happening, that there were two. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're good.
There were two conversations going on. They were different to different people. But without that visual help, the message was not the correct one that she was getting. So, okay, so we want to talk about this concept of listening also with our eyes. Okay, and again, the socialthinking.com website has a section, a free webinar on listening with our eyes. And eyes are really powerful in conversation. And sometimes we focus on eye contact, but we don't tell people why. Why do we need to have eye contact? And so eye contact, looking at what's going on, helps us gather a lot of information and helps us know when it's appropriate to speak or when it's appropriate to wait. And to understand really the whole context or a larger part of the context. So we have another video clip here, and there are a couple things that you'll want to watch for. I think it's really powerful to watch what's happening with people's eyes. Both how they're gaining information with their eyes, and also we learn a lot from what people are looking at as to what they're thinking about. Usually, if I'm looking at something, that's what I'm thinking about. So that's something that we can talk about. And you can use video clips as a family, or if you happen to come upon one that's really great, that's showing some of these examples, or a social skill or aspect that you feel like, wow, that was a really good example. Or did you see how let's pause this for just a second. Did you see how this happened? Or did you see why they missed that? So those are things you can do in the context of just watching a show. So I'm going to let you watch this. I'm wishing I could make it bigger. It was, I think because we're on Zoom, it's not letting me make it bigger, but pay attention to where people are looking and how that gives you a cue to what they're thinking about. Okay, now sound again.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is from Harry Potter. I don't know if you can see it.
Here, we can try. I don't know.
Sorry, just a second. Let me open it in a new window.
Yeah,
Maybe.
trying to see if we can. Let me see if I can.
There we go. Thanks. So you can see where his eyes are focused. His eyes. You can see where his eyes are focused. And Luna, the girl. So how did she know that? Thanks. How did she know that Harry was not wanting to talk right now? Sorry?
She was reading his face.
She was listening with her eyes, right? She was using her eyes to gather that information. He didn't say it, but she was getting that information by observing. So I love that that video because there's a lot of really good examples of eyes and focusing and where our focus is and what we can gather with our eyes. Okay.
And that kind of keys back to my idea of like, if I'm looking at the clock, if I'm looking at my watch, when I did therapy with the adolescent, he would always be like looking down, looking at the door, like he was not wanting to be there. And I would have to cue him being like, where are your eyes? And then he'd be like, at you. And then I would have to explain, when you look around the room, it makes me think that you don't want to listen to me. Maybe he really didn't, and that's okay too. But I love that concept of whole body listening. So with this slide, for those that are here for kids kindergarten through 2nd grade, we have this fun little visual that we think is really good to share with your child. So here it talks about eyes are looking at the speaker, similar like what we talked about in the Harry Potter video. Heart is caring, showing that they're interested in what is being said. Legs and feet are calm and still. And a lot of times I feel like I see a lot of fidgets, and I'm doing it a lot right now. But you see that a lot if people don't want to be heard or don't want to be listened to. Hands and arms are calm and still. The ears are open and listening, and the brain is thinking about what is being said. And a hidden rule that you can explain to the child that you're doing this for is, if I am not doing these things, people may think I do not care about them or what they have to say. At the very least, they will assume I am not listening to them. So just, again, bringing that awareness to them of, if my body is not doing all of these things, people might think that I don't care or I'm not listening to them.
Just a note of caution. We don't ever want to use this as a like discipline thing, like you're not listening with your whole body. It's a practice thing. So we don't want to ever punish when they're not doing that, but we always want to use it as an encouragement. Are you using your eyes to listen? Is your body in the group? Is your body, are you listening with your whole body? And hopefully that will be a good cue, but we don't ever want to discipline or make it a negative thing to try to use these tools.
Okay, and then the next one is, again, whole body listening for elementary K through 2. And this one is kind of taking off a little bit of the listening, but also more of how we say things. So the activity is as follows. Tell students that not only is it important to listen to the words people say, but also how they say the words. Explain to students that you can tell how a person feels about something by the way they say a word. And the example that they use for this one is to model saying the word broccoli. And you can practice this at home. You can practice this with your table, whatever you want, but pick one of these and see if they know which one how you feel about broccoli. You can say it as someone who loves broccoli. You can say it as someone that hates broccoli, or as someone that has never tasted broccoli. And just practicing that different way of saying it carries a whole different meaning that is very important to note.
And this is something you could practice at dinner time, right? Or at a restaurant even, while you're looking at a menu. So that's something that you can do in the context of your family flow. Do you want to do that for a second? Turn to your partner and say broccoli, or a friend or someone at the table. Say broccoli and see if they can tell how you feel about it.
I love it.
I know how you I heard that one.
I know.
Okay, before we move on to the next one, I just want to let you know that some of these practice and exercises are from a website called Overcoming Obstacles. It's for educators.org, overcomingobstacles.org. And it has across the educational age range. So from preschool, kindergarten through high school, of ideas for communication, other just life skills, but it's a great resource too, overcomingobstacles.org, and it's on your resources page as well. Okay, K through 5.
All righty, now let's do the next one. Okay, and then this is another activity that you can also do with kids that are elementary 3 through 5. And this activity is as follows. Tell students that they are going to get the opportunity to practice their teamwork skills. Divide the class into pairs and tell students that they will be drawing an elephant together. However, they cannot speak to their partner, and both partners must hold the pencil while drawing. One can hold the pencil at the top and the other can hold it at the bottom. Partners will be given 2 minutes to draw their elephant, and once their timer has started, monitor the pairs, make note of the pairs who use the teamwork skills that were reviewed earlier, have students share their drawings. So essentially, this is just seeing if they can understand that those nonverbal cues of, oh, if we're not talking, we're both holding this pencil, how are we going to draw this elephant? And it will be really interesting, even as a parent, as a teacher, to see what are they going to do? How are they going to work together to do that? And you'll get a lot of that nonverbal language, that eye contact, all of the social cues that are necessary to convey a message like that.
And this may be a way to see also where there are struggles as you watch this exercise. Okay, so for a little bit older age group, you can watch a silent movie or any movie clip without the audio on, and just as an exercise, say, let's see if we can figure out what's going on without the words. What are the actors portraying, even if we don't know what the words are? This is a little Charlie Chaplin with a boy in there making pancakes, and obviously there were little quote things in between to kind of help you know what was going on, but most of it was just through the actions. So this is a lot of practice just to use our eyes, thinking with our eyes, picking up on subtle cues that we're not just relying on the audio. Of course, listening to words spoken is important too, and with the broccoli exercise, you know, we see that, but it's also good to just practice, okay, how do I convey a message? How do others convey messages beyond just the words? So another thing that we'll just do real quick with someone at your table, if you want to think about it, you can take turns trying to communicate an emotion without using the words. So think about it. I'll let you pick one of these, how to say it's okay, or what time is it, or be quiet, or I'm sorry. Pick one of those and do it to somebody at your table without using the words. Show with your body, facial expressions, how would you convey that? So that's something you can just practice, and a good thing to practice with your kids. So go ahead, I'll let you do that. So nodding of heads obviously is a really common, like, it's okay, you know, there are lots of things we can do, right? So this is a good thing just for like middle schoolers to think about, practice. How do I send these messages? And how are others sending messages like this and this? And can I cue into those? Can I pay a little bit more attention to some of those messages that others are sending that I may be missing? We're not gonna watch that video, but and then for high school, another resource that you can check out is especially for older grades is the Department of Labor, dol.gov has a booklet called Skills to Pay the Bills, and there are exercises there and activities for kids to practice that kind of help prepare them for the workplace. And under the soft skill of communication, this is one of the things. And there's a sheet in there of a bunch of emotions. You can draw from that. But an activity that I've done with high schoolers is we would hand out all these papers with different emotions on them. And then without showing their neighbor, they had to find an emoji that conveyed that emotion. So pick one of these that you see here, afraid, angry, pick one, and then go to your phone real quick. Find an emoji that best suits that emotion. I'll just let you take a minute to do that. If you want to pull up your phone, and don't get distracted by your text. So stay in the group. I know myself. Oh, text. Oh, you know. So pick an emotion and then find an emoji that best matches. Some are easy and some are hard, I think. So you can do this with family members and have them show their emoji. And then the other person can try to guess what their word was and see if it's the same or different. And then that's a good way to segue into a conversation about how, what are the pros and cons of just even trying to send a text and the limits of texts or just pictures, and how sometimes it helps a lot to send your message or convey your message, but sometimes it can be misunderstood or send the wrong message. Oh, what did I do? Sorry.
No, you're okay. Oh no. There it is.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, then there is also the art of polite listening. So a lot of times when someone's talking to you, I always see just kind of like, if you're not making these subtle noises such as, oh, really? Wow. They might not think that you're listening. And I feel like that's a very common thing that you should always kind of insert. And sometimes I feel like I am victim of this. We do that kind of automatically, even if we're not listening. So we need to always make sure when we are doing these words of polite listening that we really are listening.
It's
My
just
husband
part,
is like,
the hurt part, right?
Yes.
The care. I do care. Yeah.
countless times with my husband, he's like, what did I just say? I was like, I'm sorry, but I was doing that. Wow, that's pretty cool. So I think it's a common thing. Then you also can reflect and restate what the speaker said. I feel like that's a really good way to confirm, like, oh, I heard what you said. Like, you had a bad day at work today, or school was really fun. You had a good time at recess, or whatever it may be, to restate what they said. And then you can also say things like, sounds like you had fun. Sounds like you are upset. That must have felt blank, happy. You must have felt happy with that. And then you can also ask follow-up questions. And this is kind of where I want to throw in a little side note about turn taking. When someone is talking to us and we are listening, active listening and polite listening, we might also want to take the opportunity to comment or ask a question to get more information. And sometimes that's the hardest part, is to have that active turn taking. I know in my family situation, sometimes family dinners feel like an interview from me to my brother, rather than an active conversation of him wanting to get to know me better and me getting to know him better. So making sure that you are taking those active turns while also making sure that you're not hogging the conversation, because that's another side of it. Where if you're just talking and talking and talking, I have this most amazing day, you're all about it, then you lose the listener, and then they're not going to be polite listening anymore because you've lost them already. So these are important skills that I feel like all of us, including me, could improve on to make sure that we're polite and actively listening by making those statements, and making sure we are restating and asking follow-up questions to show I care about what you're doing. That heart on the Lizzie, right? Lizzie, yep. Eliza. I say the wrong name every time. Yes, to really show that you care. So,
Okay. Just before we move on, so we've been talking about listening, right? Listening with our whole body, listening with our eyes. And and then showing that we're listening, using words to show that we're listening, restating things to show that we're listening. And along the lines of turn taking, we can start from young ages with playing games and taking turns. And then there was a time in my home when we had to use a talking spoon, and everyone wanted to talk at once. So we had our wooden spoon that it was their turn to talk. You could only talk if you were holding the spoon. So there are times, ways to practice that. Sometimes you need something really physical and concrete to remind people you can't be the only one talking all the time. So, but playing games is a good way to practice that, having other objects to remind of turn taking. And then going back to the, am I listening with my eyes? Am I realizing that speaker is now looking away from me? I can read that as maybe I'm talking too much. Maybe they're not interested in what I have to say, but maybe I haven't gotten a chance to I haven't let them have a chance to say anything or share any information. So we're going to move into now asking questions as a part of conversation. So I'm hoping this video will work for us. Okay. And this is, it's going to echo here. This is a former FBI agent. He wrote a book called What Every Body Is Saying, but this is just a little summary, and we're not going to watch the whole thing, but he explains kind of a situation of reading body language and how sometimes that can lead us astray. So we're going to see an ad for a second.
There we go.
Okay.
Got it.
I always make sure that they would sit next to the door. You know, on television, you always see the suspect sitting in the corner of the room. That is third grade interviewing. Graduate level interviewing is you sit them near the door. Why? There's greater psychological comfort there. My name is Joe Navarro, and for 25 years, I was a spy catcher with the FBI, and I am a nonverbal communications expert. So here's the truth about detecting deception or detecting if somebody's lying. There is no Pinocchio effect. It is sheer nonsense to assume that if somebody touches their nose, clears their throat, or touches their ear, that they're being deceptive. And I think this is the first time I'm revealing this on video. What we look for are indicators of discomfort and distress. We're not looking for deception because there is no single behavior indicative of deception. One of my favorite stories that's in my book, What Everybody Is Saying, is of a woman that was invited to the FBI office because she was part of an investigation. And during the first 20 minutes or so that we in the FBI used to calm the person down, this individual, instead of calming down, became even more stressed. And we hadn't even talked about the case. She was biting her lip. She was touching her suprasternal notch. She was clutching at her neck jewelry. A couple of times there, she was wringing her hands. And finally, I said to her, "Madam, you look like you need to get something off your chest." And she said, "Thank you, Mr. Navarro, because when I parked downstairs, I only had 2 tokens for the meter, and the meter's about to run out." So here were all these behaviors that maybe 30 years ago, people would have looked at and said, "Oh, this is indicative of deception. I mean, she's touched her nose, she bit her lip." No, she was worried about getting a ticket because she didn't have enough coins when she parked downstairs. And as it turns out, somebody had stolen her ID. She had nothing to do with a crime. Whether we're dealing with the honest or the dishonest, we may see behaviors that are indicative of psychological
Distress. I'll finish that. So basically in this situation, body language was sending a message, but he needed to make a comment or ask a follow-up question to clarify and see if the message that he was getting was correct. And that's something that's really important when we're having a conversation, right? We want to do that foundational social attention, whole body listening, but then we need to ask questions to see if what we are interpreting, and that goes back to the screen piece here, the social interpretation, asking questions helps us know and gives us feedback to know if we are interpreting the situation correctly and to gather more information. So we are going to, of course, just as a comment, we're not FBI interrogators, right? So we don't want our conversations to feel like an interview. But when we know it's important to ask questions, we can tell our kids, make sure you ask some good questions. But sometimes we feel stuck. Even if we're in a tense situation or an awkward or new situation, a new social situation, we might feel like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to ask. And so something that we can use as a visual aid is our hand. We have our hand with us always. And if we're feeling stuck, and you can teach this to your kids, we can find a question on our fingers: who, what, when, where, why, or how. And it doesn't have to be all of them. We don't want it to be an interview. That makes people uncomfortable if we just keep asking questions, right? But we can start there. And one of the ways that we can teach this, we can talk about handy questions. We can say, what might you ask before you go to an event or you're going to be in a new situation? What do you think? Or a new friend, or what do you think you could ask them? What kinds of questions? Well, what's a who question that you could ask? What's a what question? When, where? Just to kind of preview and think ahead is a great way. If your child or student is approaching a new situation where conversation is stressful, if maybe there's some social anxiety, to talk through, to role play. What are some questions we could ask? And then referring back to that me file and the friend file, and what are some things I know about them? What are some things I know about myself? What's some information we could trade? So that's a really great strategy, is to kind of preview that and think about, you've always got your hand there. Think about the handy questions that you can ask. Now, as parents, we can model this too. The classic parent thing is, how was your day? And that doesn't really allow for a lot of conversation all the time, right? So we can be a little bit more creative with our questions that we ask and give models. We could ask something like, how did you feel about your math test? And that may or may not result in a very good conversation, but who did you talk to today? Where did you go for lunch? And just thinking through some of those options to get a little bit more information. So just a little extra tip or cue of things that we can, ways that we can ask questions, things that we can ask about.
Okay, and then we want to tie in the focus on the relationship. Okay, and I really like this quote, so I'm going to read it for you guys. If the ultimate goal is to develop and maintain meaningful relationships, then the goal in a conversation must be to trade information and find common interests. And that is from The Science of Making Friends. And I think that's the whole point of us having conversation, right? Is to make sure that we are building those relationships and really getting to know. And this is where we can utilize that me file and those friend files to make sure that we are having those conversations that are important to another person, and having us give information about ourselves that we think another person should have. And then this carries back into my turn-taking conversation, which I love the concept of turn-taking. But you need to have turn-taking to build that relationship. And you need to avoid hogging, and you need to have kind of that fluid back and forth exchange in a conversation for it to be successful. And here we have a little video that will portray an example of this. And so here we go.
You have to get someone's attention, but you also have to take turns speaking and listening. Let's see what happens in a conversation between Sam and John.
Hey Jonathan, I got a puppy yesterday. His name's Matt. Oh, I got too. His name's Cecil. I didn't get him for rocks and stuff. Yeah, and Cecil? Yeah, he goes up to my bed to go to sleep. Yeah, and my dog's really cool.
Let's see what everyone's thinking.
keeps interrupting me. Won't let me tell him about my dog. I want to tell Sam all about my dog. Doesn't give me a chance to talk.
People will only want to talk to you if you stop and listen to what they have to say too. If you don't, the friend will probably get frustrated and walk away. Let's see what Jonathan could have done differently to get a better outcome.
Hey Jonathan, I got a dog yesterday. His name's Max, and he's scared for me with the TV. Oh, I didn't know his name was Cecil. Yeah, that's cool. My dog, he can do like tricks and take him outside and play with them. I really want to tell Sam about my dog, but he really wants to tell me about his dog. We should probably take turns. Yeah, I taught him up and lay down. I taught him sit and lay down, and I taught him how to roll over the bed.
Okay, so in this exchange, a lot happened. I feel like first he had to think of what the other person might be thinking, right? He had to catch himself and be like, oh, I really want to talk about my dog, but he actually wants to talk about his dog. So I'm going to let him talk about it too. And that is the whole concept of theory of mind, of that I might be thinking something different from him. So I need to make sure that I am allowing the opportunity for him to share that information. Now, an activity that I want you guys to do amongst your tables is tell your neighbor your thoughts about a remote learning day. We actually had this week. That's perfect timing. Without letting them have a turn to contribute to the conversation. And then we'll discuss kind of your findings. So go for it. Did we think about that experience of having one person hog the conversation? I saw a little bit more turn taking that I'm sure you guys were probably got uncomfortable rather quickly. But by raise of hands, how did you guys feel about that situation and that conversation? Anyone? Anyone?
I have a son who does this, and I just tune him out. You know, I just like, yeah, So that's what often happens, I think, one-sided.
Yes, for those that will be listening virtually, she said that she has a son that talks and she often finds herself not listening to the conversation. And so it's really common. And I feel like that's very common for all of us. I have my sister, she's approaching her doctorate and she loves to talk all about this medical jargon that I have no idea what she's saying. And it's an hour later and I'm like, I have no idea what she's talking about anymore. And if I should keep doing the polite listening. Yes.
So when we talked about this with some high schoolers and we were doing the me file and we were talking about what they did enjoy and I could see the disappointment on their faces. There was a group that loved Minecraft and the three of them wanted to talk about Minecraft all the time. And I said, you know what? You three love Minecraft. That is in your me file. And sometimes we need to tell this explicitly to people. Not everybody has Minecraft in their me file. And that might be hard. It kind of hurts because it's like so important to them, you know, whatever their favorite topic is. And sometimes we have kids that just really want to focus on their topic and tell you everything there is to know about it. But we're going to lose the relationship, right? We're going to lose the attention of our listener. And so sometimes we do have to explicitly explain that what's in your me file is important to you. And if you have friends that have that in their file too, you guys can talk about that a lot. But if you're trying to make friends with someone who doesn't know that much about Minecraft or isn't as interested in it as you might have to ask them about something else or ask them how they feel about Minecraft and then what else they like, what other video games they like. So sometimes kind of walking through that and what a conversation, how we might want to change that conversation. So I love that you're telling me about dinosaurs right now, but I need to think about this now. Or your friends might like dinosaurs, but they might want to also talk about trains and kind of preparing ahead of time about those conversations and what thinking about that friend file again, what might they want to talk about too? You can take a turn, but make sure that we're finding out and exchanging information and finding out what they want to talk about too. Just this video is from some videos, and I don't think I have it on this resource, but it's on your resource page. Social skills training. And there are some videos there. And you can also see this sometimes in other movies and things like that. So kind of watch for examples. If this is something that's really tricky for the child or children that you're trying to help, watch for examples. And then, and in a private moment, not in front of others, obviously, you can explain that. If a relationship or a conversation didn't go well, you can ask them, what do you think happened? Were you trading information? What can you do better next time? So a lot of times with some of these topics, it's preparing and then reviewing what went well and what can go better. And again, not as a way to discipline or criticize, but to support and encourage. Let's try it next time we do this. What can we do better? So any other? Okay. Oh, watch that. Oh, I did it again. Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Here we go. Okay. So again, back to focusing on the relationship, there is another great resource. It's a book called Humble Inquiry. It's actually for business relationships, but it's a great thing to look at when we're talking about what kinds of questions to ask and how to encourage better questions for building relationships. So I have this little video. It wasn't prepared by the writers of the book, but it's a pretty good overview of the content to see if this is something you would like to look into more. And again, that is on your reference sheet.
And more technologically complex, interdependent, and culturally diverse. And only by building better relationships that we will be able to achieve greater things. Hi, the Lonely Buccaneer. In this video, we're discussing our culture of do and tell, 4 types of inquiries, and a simple trick to improve communication. Ideas inspired by the book, Humble Inquiry by Edgar H. Shin. The culture of do and tell. As much as we claim to value teamwork, our society is based on ranks, role, status, and even when we think about our promotional and reward system, it is entirely individualistic. American culture put a lot more emphasis on past performance, interpersonal competitiveness, and telling rather than asking, as asking is seen as admitting incompetence and ignorance, when telling is seen as a virtue. Our role, rank, status, and culture predispose us to think that we know what the appropriate way is, and this exposes us to miscommunication, which stands in the way of building good relationships. And only by practicing humble inquiries that we will build trust, open up communication, and learn to work together more effectively. From the author's standpoint, humble inquiry is a fine art of drawing someone out, of asking questions to which we do not already know the answer, of building a relationship based on curiosity and interest in the other person. Types of inquiry. Building a relationship requires less telling, more asking, and get better at listening. In order to ask more, the author distinguished 4 types of inquiry. The first one is humble inquiry. It's also the best way to satisfy our curiosity and interest in other people and learn about their way of thinking. I feel that if I do it genuinely, I will naturally have a body language, a tone of voice, and the timing that will show the other person that I'm interested in what they have to say. Often, simply by asking someone, what are you working on? Can you give me an example? How are things going? You can start a discussion, the least biased and threatening way. As the conversation gets more specific, I tend to do more diagnostic inquiry. It happens when we get curious about a particular subject, and we steer the conversation towards it, because we want to know more about the other person's point of view. To do that, we can ask questions like, how do you feel about that? What do you think about this? And what have you tried so far? And if ever, the conversation gets more personal. You can use process-oriented inquiries, focus on the relationship itself. and it helps both parties assess if their goals are met. I personally really like this one, since it's a powerful way to get out of awkward and difficult situations. But it's also the hardest to learn since our culture is not used to questions like, are we okay? Did I just offend you? What do you think is happening between us right now? On the other hand, we're used to see confrontational inquiry, especially in movies or TV shows. It consists of taking our own ideas and turn them into rhetorical or leading questions, which are in fact a form of telling, and using them to try to convince the other person that we're right. But ask a question like, did that not make you angry? Why didn't you say something? Have you thought of going on a diet? This form of question arouses resistance and put the other person on the defensive. Trick to improve communication. I haven't always been a person good at communication. I've often misread and misjudged certain situations or taken sentence out of context. But by becoming more aware that my mind is capable of producing bias, perceptual distortion, and inappropriate impulse, I become more effective at doing humble inquiry, and I improve my communication skills. Making humble inquiry is to intentionally open up to people from the start and focus our attention on getting to know their deepest motivation. To do that, we must let go our judgment. We must not take feelings for granted. I used to think things people say a little too personal, and adopting a little humility and not rush directly to judgment have prevented a lot of impulsive reaction. Let's recap. Most of us live in a world.
And we're not going to do the recap, but so that kind of, we're going to move into some of those difficult conversations and helping our students with some of those difficult, maybe conflict conversations that they need to have, and give them some tools. In your packet, there are a couple of sample sheets, but we'll talk about earlier grades and how to do that. Yes,
So have you read this book?
most of it, not all of it. Yes.
What age would you say is appropriate?
So that's older. It would be like high school and young adults more. There's sorry, go ahead. Did you have another
I just
question?
wonder if it's, so would it be helpful for them, just to like listen to on Audible, or is it better for a parent to listen to and offer?
I would say a
suggestions?
parent,
Okay.
and then to talk about what are some questions that would show that I'm genuinely interested. And what are some ways I can be humble and realize I don't know everything about this person, and to ask questions that reflect a sincere interest. So that's kind of the overarching concept. For a little bit younger, and I think this is on your sheet too, there's a book called How Rude. And it is very explicit in things to avoid and ways that people are going to interpret different behaviors. And it's written in a very accessible style for junior high and high school. It's very funny. And we, as a family, have read it and laugh and joke about it. And it's been a good springboard for conversation about when it's appropriate to ask questions and things like that. It's a range of manners, but there's a communication section specifically too. So I would say for middle school, high school, that would probably be a better thing. This would be more for like young adult or for a parent to read and then try to model and support. And then with younger kids, kind of the handy questions and what kinds of things I can ask. So there is one more book actually for younger kids, maybe older elementary and middle school, and it's called Diary of a Social Detective. And it has several scenarios. I think that's on your sheet too. And it's also referenced on the socialthinking.com. That's how I learned about it. But it has I think he's maybe a young middle school kid talking through different scenarios and social situations that are difficult and being the detective to try to understand what's going on. So for that age group, I recommend that one. And then there's one for younger kids, and I'm going to remember it in a minute. So we'll come back to that. Go ahead.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about resolving conflict. And a lot of it is practice with I messages. And a lot of this is like, I feel, It's like the I feel statements. But before we jump into a lot more of the I messages, we want to highlight the Tucker turtle. So one thing, Elizabeth and I currently work in a special class preschool, and we actually have done this Tucker turtle together for the class. And it's essentially a story that talks about like when you might feel angry, what should you do? How could we calm down? Yeah, sometimes things happen that might make Tucker mad, and that's like not playing with each other. And it used to be that he would hit or yell or kick at his friends, but now he goes into a shell. Yeah, Tucker now knows to stop. Yeah.
Sorry,
No, keep going down, keep going down.
Okay.
Yep. So now Tucker knows that he needs a new way to stay calm. He can stop yelling and keep his hands and body to himself. Go ahead, keep scrolling. And he can stop. He can find the awareness of, I'm getting upset. I need to first stop and process. Then we have this little like puppet, and we like tuck our fingers in to kind of give that visual to those little kids of, we're going to stop and we're going to go into our shell, and we're going to take 3 calm, deep breaths to just kind of bring them back to where they need to be. And then the next step is we need to be able to think of a new solution. And then it just highlights when he stops and thinks, his body is calm and he feels better. And when he uses gentle touches and kind words with his friends and family, they feel happy and safe. So this is just kind of a story that you can use for those kids that might just get really angry really quick, and how you can help them like, okay, we need to find a new way, because a lot of our friends don't like it when we are hitting or yelling, and they might not want to play with you, and they might not feel safe. And this is an alternative. So we highly recommend it. It's a great visual with our preschool class. And I feel like they've attended to it. And I've seen some kids and I say, wait, stop. What are you feeling? And they actually are able to process and be like, oh, I feel kind of mad right now. Or I have them reflect on, oh, how was your friend feeling that you did that? And it just kind of gives that perspective taking just to a whole new level of resolving the conflict that could be happening.
Sorry, that kind of refers back to this problem solving piece before we have our social reaction, to say, okay, I need to stop. I need to think of something that I can say. We're going to move into using the I statements, but this problem solving before I then have a social response. So back to this pyramid.
Okay,
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Here.
Finicky.
There we go.
Okay, so and that's something like we used it with our preschool class. You can use it K-2 for the Tucker turtle. And then for kindergarten or K3 through 5, you can explain how an I message contains these 3 important aspects. So the first thing, begin the statement with I instead of you, and a statement of feelings such as I feel blank, or I feel sad, I feel happy, I feel mad when you do these things. Oh, and it goes in. That's the second step. Then you need to include a statement about a problem or what happened, but only stick to the facts. Do not use any hurtful words, accusations, or insults. So you start with, I feel sad when you yell at me, or for an example. Then the last step is you want to end the message with why the person's behavior has affected you and made you feel those emotions. And then that's when you just put because. So I feel sad when you yell at me because, and you can give your explanation. And I think this is something all of us can use when we're upset about a situation, to really just kind of take the you out of the situation, focus on, okay, this is how I'm feeling when those things happen to me. So when you finish writing all of the parts of the I message, the final formula should look like this as follows. So I highly recommend, and if there's a situation in your home where there was an argument, you can use this. You can bring a paper into your child's room and write it down and say, okay, let's do an I statement. Let's see what you were feeling. And this is, I think, really important, because I've seen with a lot of the kids, they don't really know how they are feeling. They just like feel angry and they just kind of show it, but they don't know how to describe it. So providing that language what I saw is that you may have felt this. Is that right? You can give those examples for them to fully dive into that emotion.
And I think that this is an opportunity too for the adults in their life to be good listeners and to really be present. I know often when children are talking to us and we're doing other tasks, it's easy not to use our eyes to listen. And we can't always do that 100% of the time, right? Because life moves forward. But especially in conflict situations, we're going to want to really be attentive listeners, whole body listeners, and to help them find words. Sometimes we have to say, use your words, right? To help a child, but maybe they don't know what words to use. And we might have to provide some examples. Are you feeling this or are you feeling this? Give them choices. Is this why? Is this why? To help them create these conversational tools so that they can be more, what's the word? Independent in expressing their needs and having those difficult conversations. So, okay. Thank you. So in your packets, there's a middle school and a high school. They're pretty similar, but this is something that you can practice with your young adults or young people, your adolescents. It creates scenarios and they could practice putting in what they might say. And then it might be a great opportunity after you've done these examples to then say, what's something else that you feel? And doing that, talking about, okay, what's an I statement? How do we start with that? And it's the same process. And you'll see how it's laid out on the sheets in there. I feel when you, because, and that helps make those difficult conversations a little bit easier. So we wanted to make sure we addressed resolving conflicts because those are difficult conversations, but very important ones and very liberating when a child can express themselves. And when I was working with high schoolers, there were some who were like, even when I try, nobody listens. So I think it's really important that when the people in our life, the youth in our lives are trying to express how they feel, even if they are still developing some of these conversational skills, that we really do our best to listen and try to understand. And some of these things are extremely difficult for our students. So these are just opportunities, and we hope we've provided some ideas for you to help build these skills so that they can feel more successful in building relationships with you and with others for every aspect of their lives. Is there anything else? Let's see. Okay, so again, here are a lot of the resources. We've talked about them as we've gone through. Does anybody have any questions about any of the resources or any of the activities we've talked about? Any thoughts? No? Hey, any comments? Things that you'd like to know more about? The first thing on here is a resource is your friendly neighborhood speech language pathologist. So if you aren't already aware, there are speech pathologists at every school in the school district, and they are a resource to you. If your child has a diagnosis and has an IEP, they can be a resource. But even if you just need some other ideas, or if you would like your child to be evaluated or other resources, and Maria maybe has some other resources for practicing social interactions in the community. Those are some people that you can reach out to. And then again, the social thinking is just a wealth of resources. There are products that you can purchase. Some of them I've referred to here, but there are a whole bunch of webinars and other examples of ways to highlight these things with your children. The overcoming obstacles have the I statements and other opportunities for practice. And the Tucker Turtle was from challengingbehavior.org. And I think the rest on there is pretty self-explanatory. So any other questions? Yes.
What about initiate conversations when anxiety or discomfort?
So I think part of that is that practice of listening and maybe talking about what's a good time? What cues can we find that it's a good time? Someone might leave kind of an invitation like, oh, I like Minecraft. And that might be a good time to start. Oh, do you like this video game? So listening for opportunities or invitations like that can be one way. Do you have any other thoughts on initiating?
I think maybe like finding an interest. I think that's always kind of a good thing, is finding an interest and finding that topic of someone that might be more comfortable to have that initiation. Because I feel like a lot of the kids that I have seen, they're just like, oh yeah, I like Minecraft, but they don't know how to like ask those questions. And I think a lot of it does go back to those knowing those handy why questions of, okay, I'm gonna ask this person, do they like Minecraft? Do they like this? To really kind of get a conversation going.
Questions? Thanks for being here. Thanks for investing in this time to explore ways to support your students. And we wish you all the best and much success as you